Hey, how's it going, everybody? Happy Friday to everyone. Hope everyone's doing good. Had a great week. Welcome back to the show. Um, we're going to go ahead and dive straight into this topic today. I feel like it's more relevant than ever nowadays. And like I said before, we're not a political show. Like, we don't do politics here. That's like the least, I wouldn't say boring, but it's just not what we do. It's not what I wanted to do with the show. So we're gonna try and leave some of that out of it. I understand that a lot of what we're gonna be speaking about might lean more one way than the other, and I appreciate everybody's beliefs and all the stuff that they follow and they want to do with their lives. But we're gonna try and hold the conversation here, or I'm gonna at least try and cover some topics here without any kind of bias whatsoever. So I'm just gonna go over kind of what I've seen and what I've read and stuff that's in the news and stuff like that. So, um, a lot of the stuff that I'm gonna be talking about, well, I actually have some kind of experience with and firsthand knowledge. So that's why I feel like I'm gonna be able to speak to it a little bit more. But before all that gets done, if you guys aren't already a subscriber, please consider hitting that subscribe button as well as that like button for us. That'll really help us out. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon so you guys don't miss an episode in the future. If you guys are on the road, on the go, to and from work, or whatever you're doing in the car, want to check us out, you can find us on Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, as well as iHeartRadio and Amazon Music at Truth Defender Podcast. If you have any questions or guest topic recommendations for myself, you can shoot us an email at thetruthDefender1776@gmail.com. Twitter, GETTR, Instagram, Rumble, everything at Truth Defender Podcast. I'll have everything linked below. I thought that I still had a Facebook page up and running, but I've had my personal Facebook account nuked so many times. It's just been deleted for a lot of stuff that I post on there. So apparently our Facebook page is not up anymore. So I'll have to get that going when I get a chance. Yeah, so everything will be linked down below in the show notes. And we can go from there. So today, the Great Replacement Theory has been around for quite some time. It's not new like everyone thinks it is. The latest iteration of it popped up around 2021 during COVID, but prior to that, it was kind of like a theory. I guess not theory, but there was a gentleman in Europe. He was a French guy, I think, a French writer named Renaud Camus, who had kind of got things started in early 2012. But prior to him, I think it goes back to about the 1970s. So it's not a new thing by any means. There's just been several iterations of it recently. So when you look up the Great Replacement Theory online, you'll see a lot of articles coming from a lot of different news media outlets. Pretty much all bad as you would expect. They usually try to explain the Great Replacement Theory away just by saying that it's a theory that comes from, like white supremacists and KKK and like all these ethno-nationalist and white supremacy groups. That's kind of just how they explain it away, and that's usually how they explain a lot of stuff away. So I don't know. You use the word racist and white supremacist and all that stuff over and over again. At this point, it's pretty much lost its luster. So yeah, it's kind of like the boy that cried wolf over and over again. So at this point, it doesn't really hold any kind of meaning anymore. When they call people like Nazis or white supremacists and all that kind of stuff, it's just used. It's like overused. Like at this point, it doesn't really hold any kind of meaning to it anymore. So that's a good thing, I guess, in the short term, but in the long run, when it's actually used to describe actual like white supremacists and racists and stuff, no one's going to believe anybody anymore because it's already been used up and played out already. So basically, I guess the kind of short breakdown of what the Great Replacement theory is, um, and where like the white supremacist aspect comes into it. They explain that the theory is that people usually white white people complain about the fact that so many immigrants are coming into the country, and that at one point in the future they're going to kind of surpass all the white folks and take over as the dominant ethnicity, whether that be Hispanics or African Americans or Black people. African American is not a term that I like to use, but um, Black folks, brown folks, whoever. It doesn't have to be a specific kind of ethnicity. I know a lot of people, when they think about illegal immigration, and we should call it illegal immigration, and all this new stuff where it's like non-citizens or immigrants and all this stuff. It's not true. We've got to call it for what it is. So they're illegals, right? So a lot of the people that like to talk about it, or when you think about the Great Replacement theory, you think about Mexican people. That's pretty much all it is. Whenever anybody thinks about people coming over the border illegally, it's just first thing you think about is like Mexican folks, right? Coming from Mexico, because that's probably like the majority of them actually do come from there. But recently, it's not been the case. I mean, you start seeing a lot of like people from Africa and Chinese folks and people from the Middle East and all kinds of different races and ethnicities coming to the border and crossing illegally. So it's not, contrary to popular belief, not just Mexican folks that are coming over. And in fact, I think it's dropped a lot since kind of like the pandemic and stuff. Um, so I was born and raised on the border. I was born in El Paso, grew up there my entire life, left at 20, I think. But I mean, I used to go to high school, to a school that was right on the border. Um, to walk out my front door and look across the street, kind of down the block, and you can see like the border fence. So I live like right on the border. So I see people crossing the border to come to my high school, to go to school at my high school that were from Mexico, in the neighboring city of Juarez. So I don't know how that actually happened. I guess maybe they use like like a local address in our neighborhoods or whatever, even if they actually live there or not. It doesn't. I don't know how they got over and actually got a chance to register for school, but I don't know how the whole thing works. Um, so I mean, I would see it, and kind of growing up in the neighborhoods like that. As a Mexican person, you live around other Mexican people, like other Hispanic people, and on that level, you don't really think about it in those terms, I guess, kind of when you're younger or even when you're older. I mean, a lot of the people, like, we're all cool with each other, friends, and we know each other from the neighborhood and stuff like that. We don't really, typically care, like, oh, this guy's illegal. It's just always like, hey, man, I came to work, or I'm looking for a job, whatever, blah blah blah. So, like, the sentiment within the group of all your friends or like everybody is just like, oh yeah, like he's illegal, but like nobody say nothing. He's just here and he's a cool dude or whatever, and like he brings his family and all that stuff. And it's a real hush hush thing. Like everybody knows it, but nobody says anything, and nobody would say anything. Um, and it's kind of like a weird environment, like knowing that people are illegal, but you don't say anything. But that's just how it is. So like, it's not right, but like no one would ever say anything. Um, so I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing. I mean, there's been, I guess, negatives to. Well, there is like major negatives to it. Obviously, when you bring in cheaper labor than the people that are already willing to work for a low wage, it really hurts. Like the other people that are coming in that did it the right way, legally, migrated into the country, got their green card or they become citizens, whatever. you know, when you bring in people that are illegal, they're willing to take jobs that nobody else would do for lesser pay. So even if you had somebody that's in the country legally, they came from Mexico or whichever country, and they were already doing those kind of jobs that nobody wanted to do. Now you got people that are willing to do those jobs for way less just so that they could stay in the country. That hurts minorities. It hurts the people that come in legally. It hurts the brown communities, the black communities, other minorities who already kind of got the short end of the stick. Now you're a minority that did it the right way, but now you're, I wouldn't say competing with other minorities because they already took your job because they're willing to do it for way less. Now you're kind of stuck in a hard between a rock and a hard place because you don't want to say anything like, hey, that's my people. I don't want to be a snitch, whatever. But at the same time, like they're taking our jobs. And that mostly hurts the minority communities, black and brown, that are willing to take those jobs for less. And then you have people like Cesar Chavez, um, who was part of the United Farm Workers back in the 50s and 60s. There's like a big figure within the Hispanic community. Even him, he wasn't too keen on illegal immigration because he understood that, just like what I said, these people will come in for lesser pay, take jobs that people need for those other people that are here legally and did it the right way. You're actually hurting your own community. Um, so it's kind of a rough deal, but I mean, you want to follow the letter of the law, it's illegal, right? So it's getting worse and worse now. Being here in Texas, I mean, we see it every day. Um, People being brought over the border or being allowed to cross the border with, being unchecked. They even had that case in El Paso where they were storming the fences. Um, it's getting pretty crazy along the border. I don't really know what to think of this whole thing when they bus illegals to like other cities and stuff like that. I know Abbott here in Texas does that a lot. He sends illegals up to like sanctuary cities and stuff. And then on one end, like when you look at it at face value, everybody's like, oh, that's cool. Like we should bust more and we should bust more. I'm kind of torn between that because at face value, I'm like, yeah, let's get them out of here as well. But on the other end, like you're busting more potential, I guess, Democratic voters, I guess you would call them, into areas that already have a huge population of them. Now, this is going to be a big problem when the census comes back around. Um, when's the next census? Like 2030, I think. Um, and when that happens, what typically happens when like during an election is um, certain states have like so many, I forget what you call them, like votes they give to candidates and stuff, and they have to win that state to be able to be backed and all that stuff. When the comes out in 2030, they're going to have to start creating new districts because districts are going to be overpopulated, which means they're going to add new, I guess, voter sections to a certain state. They're going to give them more votes and stuff like that, and they're going to have more say in who gets to be president. So, like, on one side, I'm like, cool, let's get them out of there and get them to sanctuary cities. But at the same time, we keep sending them out there, and that's going to create new districting and all that kind of stuff, which is going to end up hurting us in the long run. But who knows? It's rough, but I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing. I mean, so typically, basically, the Great Replacement is to bring in lower waged, less skilled workers to do jobs that people don't want to do. Basically undercutting minorities in the country, and that's like a big thing as well. It's like a big deal, but at the same time, it's not just minorities or other like illegals taking jobs that nobody wants to do. You see in New York, they have instances where the illegals show up to hotels that are like $300, $400 a night free food and housing and cell phones, and they give them credit cards that they can use each month. And then they complain that they don't like the food and they don't like where they live and they don't like the conditions, and they want to go out and live somewhere else and get a job. Now they're starting to change laws in other cities to where they want to start allowing illegals to vote. Um, and I don't think it's going to be on the national level, but they can vote for like the city mayor, they can vote for the state governor, or like any other kind of positions within the state, or within the city councils and stuff like that. Um, so that's eventually coming down the pipeline as well. I'm not exactly sure if that's like a thing in certain cities or not, but it's coming down the pipe. But then you also have individuals. I forgot. I think it's like in San Francisco somewhere, which isn't surprising that they had a lady who is a Chinese national. She's not even an American citizen, and she was voted into some kind of government position within San Francisco, I think, like city council or like something like that, like mayor. I don't remember exactly what it was. But, that they have individuals like that aren't even American citizens, and they're being allowed to enter like the lower rungs of government, right? Um, I mean, that's like allowing somebody just to migrate into the US and then like run for president, and then they get in. One, under the Constitution, that's illegal, but they start changing laws and adding amendments and stuff, and then all of a sudden you have people that aren't even born here like able to run for government office and they're actually getting in. When you come into the States, man, I don't know if you become a citizen or not, but when you're legal, obviously you can't have a gun. You can't buy guns legally. Obviously, a lot of people get them illegally. But now we have a few cases of, I think, so one of them is in LA, one of them is in Illinois, and the other is in Denver, Colorado. They're actually putting up bills to vote on where illegal aliens or immigrants or whatever you want to call them can actually be police officers. So this is a story from March of this year. I'll read a little bit of the story and I'll have it linked down below. It's from American Family News. LAPD criticized for handing badge and gun to illegal aliens. After the California legislation amended state law to allow border crossing legals to wear a police uniform, the Los Angeles Police Department announced last December it had graduated 6 DACA recipients from the academy. DACA is an acronym for Deferred Action for Child Arrivals. That's obviously when they call those like anchor babies, when illegals come in, they have kids here, those kids are like American citizens. So that's DACA and all that stuff. But there was a quote here from a man named Randy Sutton, who's the founder of the Wounded Blue. It's a law enforcement organization. Randy Sutton, founder of the Wounded Blue, says the LAPD now has illegal alien cops on the streets in a city famous for hating police officers. Police officers that are working there, he says, are under constant threat of being fired, terminated, or brought up on charges for political purposes. And of course, they have a district attorney there that loves to prosecute cops. So we have 3 instances that I've seen so far, articles that support it. The Illinois bill went through December of last year. HB 3751 was passed by both chambers, and HB 3751 amends the Illinois Municipal Code, provides that an individual who is not a citizen but is legally authorized to work in the United States, I guess by green card, or I don't know how they do that, under federal law is authorized to apply for the position of police officer subject to all requirements and limitations other than citizenship. So you don't even have to be a citizen. Um, to which other applicants are subject, right? So that went through. Illinois now allows illegals to be police officers in Illinois. LAPD already has that going on. Denver could allow non-citizens to be police officers and firefighters. Non-citizens just means illegal. I don't know why they do that now, where they uh, call them like non-residents or whatever they do. That non-citizens, just they're illegal. That's it. So this is from Axios in Denver. Two Denver council members are proposing allowing non-citizens to work as police and firefighters in Denver. So I don't believe that one's gone through yet. They're actually putting the bill up for that now. So, but I mean, when you have police officers who are not born and raised in the communities that they're serving under, they didn't have to be from the same city or state. I know a lot of cops that come from out of state, whatever, and they become cops in other places. That's fine. But when you're not born in a country and you don't know the laws and the culture in and out, right? And then you just kind of step into a law enforcement position. That's rough, right? Because you don't, like I said, you don't know the people, you don't know kind of like the cultures and the things that are going on in the streets, right? They have no allegiance to anybody but the badge. For a lot of people, that it's a double-edged sword, right? Because you have the people that want to defund the police and get rid of the police and all that kind of stuff, but now they're going to have illegals that want to be police officers and stuff like that. Now, like, they're gonna want to fund them more, I guess. But at the same time, these people have no allegiance, right, to to this country. The same people that are fighting the police are now going to want these people to be police officers. And when these people that are coming in that are illegal come knocking at your door, or they pull you over for like an unlawful search and seizure and all that kind of stuff, like they don't have any kind of allegiance to you. They do it on purpose because they want these people to be they're kind of like mini Gestapo against the United States citizenry. Um, Whenever people don't want to go along with things or like unlawful orders and stuff, they can just roll these people out. Um, yeah, and then it's just going to be like unlawful things going on and people getting hurt and people getting shot, and it's going to be like, well, they're not from here, they don't care. So it's kind of a weird roundabout kind of thing where they want to get rid of the cops, but I guarantee you, when this starts to get a little more traction and it's more mainstream and out front, you're going to see the same, I guess, people that are fighting to defund the police. They're going to start coming out in droves and saying, like, we got to fund them and get these people from other countries in as police officers, and this and that, blah, blah, blah. So it's going to be like a complete 180. Um, it's going to be an interesting thing. I don't know. I find it extremely dangerous. I like to say that I back the blue, not blindly though. I do recognize that there are officers that have issues, and just like any other person, there's some great cops out there and all that kind of stuff, just like there are in many different levels on the corporate ladder, or whether they work for the community and stuff like that. And there's also some shitty ones. It just comes, with the job, and not even with the job, but just like on a personal level. Maybe that person's going through something or whatever, and they just kind of take it out on their job. But I mean, there's different levels to that kind of stuff, and it happens everywhere. It's not just the cops. There's other. Have you gone to the DMV? Do you do you know how that whole thing works as well? There's a lot of shitty people that work for the government as well. It's not just police officers, but um, I don't know. It's rough. It's kind of scary when you. I mean, are they going to start like offering citizenship for service like they do like in the military? I know there's a lot of people that I know that were in the military that weren't American citizens, and they allowed them to join with the promise that they'd get like a green card or even become citizens once they get out. I mean, it happens. This could be like another form of that as well. But it's definitely concerning to think that illegals that can't buy a gun are now going to be handed a badge and a gun and could be serving warrants at your house. They really don't give a shit now. Pulling you over, you know, how far is that whole thing gonna, kind of go? Um, it's interesting. Definitely is interesting. Um, the rest of the world as well. I don't know. I guess kind of like prior to COVID, there was a lot of mass migration that was happening around the world, all throughout Europe. Germany and France and Sweden was another big one. Countries like that, they were just kind of taking mass migration in. Um, it's definitely not a good thing. I mean, Sweden, I remember back in the day, was one of the bigger countries, or not bigger, but one of the main countries that was taking in a lot of, you know, immigrants. But also during, that kind of time, you were seeing a lot of instances of like rape and murder and all that kind of stuff that was going on. And they were mostly taking people in, um, what was it, from, I think it was like Africa. I don't remember exactly where it was, but there was a lot of them that were coming in. So they were taking in 2015. The Swedish people took a lot of pride in the fact that they were accepting like over 200,000 refugees, most from like Syria and Iraq, Afghanistan. Um, but they were also taking in people from like Africa and stuff like that. So I remember for a while, so I don't know about now, but Sweden was kind of went from one of like the nicest places to live and great people and great country and all this stuff, and it went to one of the most dangerous countries in the world, where it turned into like, I remember when I was living in the Middle East, I was living in Bahrain. There was parts of the city that you couldn't go to because they were called black flag areas. Um, these were areas that you could tell too, like you're driving to the city, and there was usually like flags that were sticking out from buildings or like houses on the corner, and you would drive through and you'd see like a flag sticking out, and it had a black flag on there, and those were basically areas where anybody that wasn't from there was not allowed to drive through there. Um, especially if you weren't from from that country, especially as an American, you weren't allowed to go through there. But I remember that when I got stationed there and I was living out in town, and I remember we had like the initial brief, um, and they were kind of going over like what areas not to go to, and don't go into these bars and these restaurants, and don't go to these buildings because these are areas where you're not supposed to be because they don't like us there, and this and that. And I was like, oh, cool. And as soon as I got in my car, and like the first thing I did, I started driving around town. Um, and I remember going down a block, and I didn't even realize I wasn't paying attention. I turned onto a black flag area street and had a big black flag. I didn't even notice until I was like halfway down the block. And I only noticed was because they had a bunch of flyers on the wall. And it was like those typical flyers of like jihad, like flyers where they had their faces covered and they had like suicide bomber vests on, and they were carrying like AKs and stuff, and they were all over the wall. Um, and I remember like stopping, and I was like, "Oh shit! Like I'm in the wrong neighborhood." So I slowly backed out. And I was going back, and people were like looking at me, like, "What the heck is this guy doing?" And there's like no tint on the windows, and I'm obviously whiter than a lot of people there. And they're just kind of looking at me like, "What the heck is this guy doing?" So it's dangerous. I mean, there's a lot of stuff like that that's going on in Sweden now that was never there before. There's areas that you can't go through, and these migrants have completely taken over certain areas of like the cities and like the major cities. And there's a lot of cases of like kidnappings and murders and rape and all this kind of stuff, but they just don't report it as widespread. It's a lot of the issues that are happening here as well when people are getting like mugged or beaten up in the streets and stuff, and they just don't report it because they don't want to make the people that did that to them look bad, and they just like hide it. It's one of the weirdest things that's going on here today as well is that the administration that's in charge now is talking about how crime is down and this and that. And the only reason crime, that is true, but it's not because like people aren't committing crimes or they're cracking down on crime. It's because crimes are not being reported. And even if they are, nobody does anything about it. So they just don't report it because they know nothing's going to happen. So in one sense, sure, for the stat wise, crime is down because it's not being reported. Nobody does anything about it. So yeah, it is down, but it's not for the like for the right reasons. So that's one of the shittier parts about it, and it's not good at all. So it's like, yeah, so a large number of like migrants and refugees entering Europe. I mean, they don't really have like any kind of explanation other than, I guess, maybe invasion. I don't know, but there's no like reason or like rhyme or reason. I guess like the war that was going on out there. Um, I don't really know. I guess there was some kind of crisis that was going on in the Horn of Africa at the time, in West Africa. It was causing those migrations and stuff. But they had, they took them in Europe. It was like a big thing. I think Germany stopped doing it because they saw that it was starting to be like a huge issue, like a big, big issue. Um, so big, in fact, that this year the Olympics are going to be held in France this year. So it was becoming such an issue that France now is starting to ask other countries all over the world to start sending like police officers and military to help them um, protect the Olympics that are going to be happening there. Um, I think one of like the biggest shit shows ever was when the Olympics went to Brazil and like Olympians were getting like mugged and all kinds of stuff. They couldn't go out, and like it's just like a weird. Like, why would you have the Olympics of all things in countries like that? So France is like another one of those big ones that took in a large number of immigrants. And they're living all over the streets in Paris. Um, the same thing like you see in LA now, where there's tents all over the place and people living all over the streets, doing drugs and taking shits on the corner and peeing not like in the street. That kind of stuff is happening in Paris right now, and it has been for a while. You spend any amount of time on TikTok looking at Paris, you'll see a lot of TikTokers out there saying, they have like those lists of like the most beautiful places to visit on earth and like the places people want to go. And Paris was on one of them. I don't remember who it was. I could care less, but um, there was another TikToker that came out and he was kind of going against that list as well. And he was going to all these different places and showing what they really look like. So the first guy was showing how he was visiting all these nice places and all these cities, and it was so cool. You should go visit. And the other dude was like walking down the street, looking at crackheads and like people living on the street, peeing. Like certain areas were like completely destroyed. And this was right next to the Eiffel Tower. It wasn't like some obscure area of the city where nobody really goes to, and it's kind of like the sticks and this and that. And it was like right outside of the Eiffel Tower. They have giant fences around it now, so people don't go live underneath the Eiffel Tower and put up tents and stuff like that. And he was just like, this place has gone to shit because of all the migration that they let in. So it's rough. I mean, this is a story from the AP, and it reads: France asks for foreign police and military help with massive Paris Olympic security challenge. France says it has asked 46 countries if they would be willing to supply more than 2,000 police officers each to help secure the Paris Olympics this summer, as organizers finalize security planning for the French capital's first games in a century. The Interior Ministry said Friday that the request for foreign security assistance was made in January, seeking nearly 2,000, almost 3,000 from each country. The officers are sought to help with game security and the spectator experience and to strengthen international cooperation. Yeah, I'm sure. They just want to keep people out of certain areas of the city, I'm sure, and they want to keep the migrants from coming in and drinking, causing trouble and stuff like that. They took they took notice of what happened in Brazil, right? There was a lot of shit that was going on in Brazil that nobody noticed. They were covering up certain areas of the city with like these giant fences. They were blocking off like all the favelas, and so that people wouldn't see when they were driving through, right? And they were painting them all really nice and all that kind of stuff. Um, and it's retarded. Like it's the biggest, dumbest thing ever. Um, Now they want to risk tourist lives out there because I'm sure there was a lot of tourists. I didn't see anything specific or like the numbers for it, but I'm sure there was a lot of tourists that went to Brazil. They got mugged or whatever. Um, Paris is not as bad that I know of yet, but like I mentioned, with all the immigration that went through there, well, I guess they were brought in, they were allowed in. So refugees, I guess. Um, it would be the same thing. There's no reason to believe that it'd be any different. The videos that I've seen of Paris, and you can look them up on YouTube, they have them out there. Um, it's bad. It looks just like LA, just like LA. I don't think that the drug use is as bad. If you look at videos of like Philly here in the States, the entire city of Philadelphia is filled with people that are just doing crack out in the open, heroin and all that stuff, and they're just out on the street and dying slowly in their own shit. It's like it's bad, right? I don't think it's that bad yet out there because the drugs and all that kind of stuff doesn't kind of seep into the France as it does like here in the States. It's not as profound, um, but I'm sure it's coming. um, so I mean that's like the kind of thing, right? So they bring in militaries and police officers from other countries in and all that kind of stuff, and you know that would probably never happen here unless the UN gets involved, which screw those guys. Um, but I mean, why would it have to happen here if they've already imported, well, like by November, I think it'll be like 8 million, I think last estimated illegals, and if half of those are military age males, which I think more than half of them are, there'd be no problem with them filling slots, within the police departments. I'd be willing to bet that they'd fire everybody that's already there and pay the illegals like a higher wage or like a lesser wage, and then they'd be good because they'd follow orders, without question. So it's definitely something to look at. It's just it's just weird that they would ask for military and police officers from other countries to come in. So that's the wildest thing I've ever heard. uh, then on like another note of that, I think the craziest thing going on currently at the border is the fact that they're allowing Chinese nationals to come into the US. Now, I read a story somewhere that there was something like 30% of the Chinese nationals that they bring into the States are being arrested. I'm not sure what they're doing that's causing them to arrest them because from what we've seen typically at the border right now is they're just being allowed to come in, no questions asked. They're not being arrested, they're being detained and I guess registered somewhere or getting their information and given like a court date, which they'll never make. But apparently they're arresting these other guys that are coming from China. Now, the fact that I have one thing actually. So we were at the air show here in Fort Worth this past weekend, and I saw a lot of Chinese people, I think, with these like large cameras with giant lenses taking pictures of like all the planes and all that kind of stuff. Very suspicious. I don't know what you want to take from that. Whatever. But um if you were listening to Professor Weinstein from the Dark Horse podcast, um, he actually made a trip down South America. Um, and he was following these lanes that the Chinese nationals were coming through. They were coming up from South America. They were hitting camps along the way that are gated off, and they have like tarp all around them or like fences that are only for Chinese nationals. And there's two groups. So there's those camps that are only for the Chinese, and then there's those other groups that are for other people coming from wherever else. The Chinese groups, anytime you try and like walk up to them and talk to them, they'll get pissed off. Like, don't talk to me, don't even look at me, like, don't point the camera at me, this and that. They're taken into these other like separate groups where they get in there and they eat and like shower and get sleep, and they're given money and cards, and they're given like maps and certain ways and things they need to do in order to get to the border, who to look for and like what to say when you get here, and this and that. But the fact that they're like separate from everybody else, nobody knows what goes on in these like camps. They don't allow anybody in there, and the people that go in there and come out like don't want to talk to anybody, and they get pissed off when you try to record them. And they're all guys. You never see any girls in there. They're just all guys that are young, between 20 and 30, and that's it, right? They're given like scripts, and they're given like these apps you could scan like the little QR codes. They're given instructions for all kinds of stuff and like what to say once they hit the border and this and that. But then once they come to the border here, they're also separated here. Everybody else that comes, they're taken into like a different section. Um, Different countries, they could be coming from Africa or m- the Middle East or down south, anywhere else. All the other countries, they're all separate. But once again, the Chinese nationals here, they come and they're brought into the country and they go to another separate area by themselves. So it's like, why are they being separated? What are they being kept away from the public for? What's going on with them? Um, Back when I was in the military, back in like 2012, there was reports that there were like, well, at that point, we were still like in Afghanistan and all that kind of stuff. But if you look at a map from the FBI, they have terrorist camps that are set up all across the US. Camps that the FBI knows are there, and they monitor them and they allow them to continue doing whatever they're doing. Um, there's a couple of major camps here in Texas. I think out east, kind of down below where I'm at now, kind of like in between Houston and Dallas, somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, there's a camp. I know there's a Chinese, not camp, but the Chinese were allowed to buy like 100 acres worth of land right next to one of the Air Force's like um, training facilities where they train all the pilots. There's like an area out here in Texas down by the border. Oh man, I forgot what it's called. But anyways, it's like a so there's this Chinese general that was buying up land down here, and he bought 100 acres next to this Air Force training base. And that Air Force training base is an area where all the pilots come and they train, like after they get out and they train to fly and all that stuff. This general, I don't know how he's allowed to buy land here. I think he did it through like another company, like a Shaw Corporation or something. He bought it with the intention to build um like a wind farm. That was his, or that was their story. Um I think it's like 130 acres, I think is what it was. Anyways, he wants to build a wind farm, and that's the excuse that he gave in order for them to buy it, right? This is not the only thing. Like there's other areas around the country where Chinese companies or nationals or whatever is going on, they're buying up land around all the military bases around the US. Um, and it's not an accident, right? There's even one like in Montana and stuff like that where they launch missiles, and there's like a bunch of missile silos and stuff like that. And they bought a lot of like farmland around that area. Obviously, they want to connect to the grid and they want to monitor the grid, what's going on. I mean, the Chinese steal all kinds of technology from us all the time. That's the only way that they've brought um, that they've that they're kind of like up to snuff with us. The Chinese, left to their own demise, like they would not have came up with a lot of the technology that they have right now. Everything they have has been stolen. Um, I don't want to make like a huge generalization, but when I was in the military and I was talking to a guy, I won't even give any kind of vague description of who he is. I don't, but I was talking to a guy who's in intelligence. And he says that all of the Chinese nationals, according to him, I don't know if this is true or not. I wouldn't doubt it, but according to him, all of the Chinese college students that come from China and like foreign exchange and all that kind of stuff are not directly working for the Communist Party, but if their number's called, like they would have to give up any kind of information that they know. So these students that come that are foreign exchange and they get into like Harvard and Stanford and they work for all these major corporations that deal with like military secrets, that have like weapons and all that kind of stuff. They work for the government and they deal with like submarines or nuclear and all that kind of stuff. Like they send information back home. You even have instances where like the Chinese government bribes American service members with like thousands of dollars and eventually they get caught. But like it happens all the time. You know, there's freaking traders all over the place, and being on a military salary, all of a sudden another government comes to you and they offer you like $300,000 to give up secrets. If you're like 21, 22-year-old kid, and you're just like, man, like, you know, that's awesome, right? But eventually, I have no doubt that they give them up, you know, like in the end, and then they end up going to jail. But it's just wild. I mean, we had instances of the Chinese government setting up police departments in New York City as well. That was the thing that was happening a couple of years ago. They were setting up like, um, I guess, like little check stations where they were supposedly only monitoring Chinese um, residents that were like here in the States or that they came to like study or whatever. But there was like an actual Chinese CCP Chinese station in Times Square where they were supposedly only watching out for, you know, for Chinese and stuff like that. Yeah, and they also have there's a good one here as well. Yep. Yeah, so they have Sharia law police. I don't know if they're police. They're only for Islam, and like supposedly they only patrol and take care of like people that are Muslim. But there is Sharia law divisions that belong to the New York Police Department. They have their own like vehicles and they have their own offices and they drive around the city and stuff like that. So yeah, that's actually like a real thing as well. Yeah. But all of these things that are allowed to happen in the US, like every toll that you drive on, wherever, you know, wherever you're from, those tolls are all they're owned by companies in China. Like they all that money that you pay for toll tags and all that kind of stuff, that goes to China. All the farmland that's being bought up around all the military bases, that's all China. They steal state secrets. A lot of the people that work in the government, um, what's that clown, that Republican dude that's married to that Chinese lady? What that stupid ass dude that looks like a turtle with the glasses? That old dude. He's a Republican guy. Oh, man, I forgot his name. Majority leader for the Republican Party. White dude, glasses. The one that like froze up on TV that one time. I forgot his name. Somebody help me out. um, let me see. Let me see. Let me see. What's your name? I already forgot his name. Oh well. Oh, Mitch McConnell. There you go. That's right. Mitch McConnell. Right? That's his name. I think that's his name. Yeah, Mitch McConnell. So Mitch McConnell. Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. Foreign troops would not. There'd be no allegiance, to the U.S., and that's why they want to make police officers in the states mostly made up of illegals. Eventually, they want to get rid of all the police officers that are, born and raised here in the states, and they just want to have a force, completely comprised of people that aren't from here. And there's no like having to bribe them or any of that kind of shit. They just uh, tell them what to do, and they're like, all right, we'll do it because they have no allegiance here. So, but yeah, so Mitch McConnell, that dude is married to a Chinese lady and has been for a long time. He has, or his wife, I mean, obviously it's theirs. His wife has some companies in China and they make a shit ton of money. So that dude, like, he's here, like he's an American, but he's not an American. Like the dude's compromised like you wouldn't believe, and everybody. It's like I've always said, we need to make congressmen like wear like freaking NASCAR jackets with all the patches from all the people that give them freaking money and who sponsor them and all the donations they get. We should make them all like have freaking NASCAR jackets with like all the companies on them. So it's like, oh yeah, well, not surprised. It was probably ruled a suicide. She hung herself from a tree and shot herself in the back 3 times with a shotgun. Usually how it goes. But I mean, that dude, corrupt as shit. So yeah, there's that area that. So I'll kind of go over. This was a report that came out in 2020, December 14, talking about the military base and the Chinese here in Texas. So it says this is coming from Devil's River Conservancy. And I'll have that linked as well down below. Chinese investment near Texas military base draws scrutiny. A wind farm in Texas near the Air Force's largest pilot training base came under the spotlight in recent weeks because the owner is a Chinese businessman described as carpetbagger. That's a nice name. With strong ties to the communist regime in China, over 130 acres of Texas ranch land, an area the size of Tulsa, Oklahoma, was sold in 2018 to China-based Guanghe Energy Company. Sung Guangxing, the founder of Guanghui, is a former Chinese military officer and the richest person in the western Xinjiang region with a $1.9 billion net worth, according to Forbes. In 89, when Sun left the army, he didn't leave the army. They did still attached to some kind of intelligence somewhere. I'm pretty sure. He had no money, but was bursting with ambition. Yeah, I'm sure. Generated vast fortune pretty quickly. Jiangxing is home to internment camps where the U.S. State Department says more than 1 million Uyghurs. Nobody ever talks about the Uyghurs anymore. And other Muslim minorities are held without charge. About 95% of Texas land is privately owned. Private ownership combined with loose regulations in Texas makes property purchase easier for foreign buyers, which needs to stop. Huh. Yeah. It was absolutely an accident, and don't you dare question it. Yeah, it's funny how these people just end up dead when they. Um, this is another one from October 2022. Xi Jinping has one goal: override the United States and make China the global superpower. In order to do that, he is attacking freedom and democracy worldwide. We know that. Uh, the Chinese Communist Party has exploited America's free market system and become the second largest economy in the world. At the same time, they have been pushing the envelope when it comes to the military. Recent Reporting shows that the CC affiliated corporation purchased farmland in North Dakota that is just a stone's throw from high capability military bases. The purchase raises the possibility that the Chinese government could use the farmland as a launching pad for espionage under the guise of operating a business. Yeah, I mean, that's not, they say like that could be happening, but I guarantee that's exactly what's happening. They're just monitoring the systems and spying on all the military bases and stuff. So that one up there in North Dakota is like another missile silo, and they launch all the missiles and stuff from. So, um, yeah, it's wild that it's just allowed to happen, and they use the guise of like corporations, other corporations buying land and stuff like that. But it's all, and they say that they're like businessmen or they're former this and former that, but China is like this weird democratic communist system when it comes to like businesses and corporations. Like they're allowed to function on their own and make money, and everybody that works there makes money and all that kind of shit. But they have to like give half over to the Communist Party. Like they can make billions of dollars, but the Communist Party needs their cut too, right? So like everybody gets rich, and if they want, they can just take your money. Like they allow you to get rich, and then allow you to keep your money. But if you step out of line, then they take everything you own and your life, and then it's all over. So that shit is wild, but not surprising. Uh, but yeah, I mean, we got to keep an eye out. It's just now they want to give people the like the ability to vote without like an ID and all that kind of stuff, which is wild. Um, I don't understand this whole thing about voter ID is racist and all that kind of stuff. And I, the progressive liberal is probably the most racist group of people that has ever existed. Um, because in the fight against racism, they are the biggest racists that have ever existed. It's wild. It's like the craziest thing. Like they don't understand how that operates. Like they say that voter ID is racist, but on the other hand, they say stuff like it's racist because black people don't know where to get IDs, or like how to get an ID, or like how to even apply for an ID. They say things like black people are less likely to have like internet at home, or don't have the money to buy like minutes for their phone, or have a phone plan. Like the weirdest shit like that in itself is racist. Saying that black people don't know how to get IDs, or like where to find the freaking DMV to get an ID. But then they say like it's racist to have a photo ID, or it's racist to have an ID to vote because black people don't know how to do it. Like how to get it. Like what the what are we talking about here? That's the kind of like crazy mental gymnastics that happens all the time. Like you're so oppressed and I'm your savior because only I know how to save you, and like what you need in order to be saved. Like, 'cause that's like the most racist thing ever. Like, I don't understand. It's wild. It's like the wildest thing ever. I don't know. It's crazy, man. Like, it's only gonna get crazier. I mean, I just don't gotta keep an eye out. I mean, if you don't already own a weapon, you need to own one at least. I may or may not have several. I don't even know where I left them. But you need to. Like, you need to find this is not like over exaggerating either. Like purchase a weapon, learn how to use it, get together with people you know, make a plan when shit hits the fan. I mean, I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, you're like a prepper and you're crazy and this and that." Like, Save your own life, save your kids' lives, stay ready, stay prepared. For a lot of people that live in these crazy ass areas where like gun laws are a huge thing and it's hard to purchase a weapon, you need to have one because like yeah, like you said, sleeper cells will be popping up in places. I mean, there's a lot of people that were on the terror watch list that were arrested as they tried to come over. I guarantee you, there's a lot of people that are on those lists as well that never got caught. All it takes, we got this whole thing going on with Iran and Russia, where Russia says if the U.S. attacks Iran, then Russia's going to jump in, all that kind of stuff. That shit can happen. They don't even have to like attack us. The U.S. will never ever be invaded from the outside. We'll never fall like in a conventional war. Nobody will ever beat us that way. But all these people that have already snuck in and are sneaking in currently, all that has to happen is something like if anybody's ever seen Star Wars, Order 66, those people are already in here. One day when something happens, they just flip that switch, boom. And these people that have been here already, they just come out of the woodwork and start taking over neighborhood by neighborhood until they take over a city, and then they start taking over the whole state, and then eventually it's done. These states that are more like liberal, where gun laws are more prevalent and they're not allowed to own weapons and stuff like that, like those are the first to go down. You're gonna have giant pockets where a lot of people are gonna be fighting back and stuff like that, but with the majority of the country being gun-free zones and all that kind of shit, like, the cartels have already taken over the border. Other groups are sneaking into the heart of the country, monitoring military bases surrounding it. I bet you a lot of these people that are coming in are going to end up on those freaking Chinese patches of land. A lot of the people, just mark my words, all these people that are coming in, one day we're going to see a story on the news where it's going to be like, oh, this Chinese national snuck over the border in 2023 and he ended up on this farmland that's up here in North Dakota, like right next to this freaking silo where they launch missiles. He's gonna like end up there somehow. He's gonna get arrested for something. That's what's gonna happen. They're just surrounding all these areas, these military bases, and then one day, boom, they're activated and they start an assault. I used to work security for military bases and stuff. I used to stand gate as well. I guarantee you, these military bases are not as hardened as we need them to be. Not even close. Some of the kids that I was with that are like 19, 20, 21, 22 years old, standing gate, it's a joke. It's not going to cut it. Sleeping on watch, complaining about they got to stand watch from midnight. I used to stand 16 hours watches, 17 hours at the gate in like 110, 15-degree weather, standing all night from 6 to 7, 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. the next morning, every night. It's just a joke. The kind of security that we got at all these military bases, it's just not going to cut it. But I don't know. There's a lot of shit that's not going to cut it right now, and it's not cutting it. So we all got to be aware of what's going on. Everybody needs to be aware of their surroundings when you go out and stuff like that. Yeah, it's all part time. Freaking, it's wild. I used to walk in and freaking catch people asleep on watch. We have like a military base. I won't say where, but it's dedicated to like training students on like nuclear reactors and like submarine stuff and stuff like that. And just to walk into like people's shacks and stuff, like asleep on the floor with no vest on and their boots off, and like just dude, what the fuck, It's rough. It's rough. Rough. But like I said, you gotta be aware of your surroundings at all times. I know it sounds like freaking paranoid and all that kind of shit, but it's not. Like, be aware. Especially in the cities and stuff, be ready to help other people out. No, like standing and recording, watching people get their shit kicked out of them or mugged or whatever. we gotta start building like a sense of community around where you live. Get to know your neighbors. I know a lot of people. I don't know my neighbors. I know I'm talking shit as well, but like you've got to know your neighbors, know the people that live around you. Talk. Hey, you got weapons? Yeah, I got weapons. What's going on? Blah blah blah. If this shit were to ever happen, like let's make a plan and we do this and do that. Everybody's got to come together and kind of figure shit out because a lot of people don't know who lives around them. They don't know their neighbors. They don't talk to them. They only see them in passing, maybe like before or after work, and kind of wave hi, "Hey, what's going on?" or whatever, blah blah blah. But besides that, it's you know, get a weapon, buy a lot of ammo, get to the range and train, and work out. Hit the gym. Seriously, we'll start walking. Nothing. All of that doesn't matter if you're out of shit shape. You can't even walk down the driveway. You can't even walk up a set of stairs. You gotta be ready, man. Stay ready at all times. Do something a little bit. Go swimming, get on the row machine, get on the treadmill, go walk outside, something to get that freaking blood pumping. But I don't know, you guys, let me know what you guys think. It's all very unsettling and it's not too I don't have too much I have hope for the future, but it's we're kind of cutting it close. So yeah, communities are being dismantled. Um, and it's a shame, you know. It's not just for the sole purpose of like being able to set up some kind of resistance in the future or whatever, but you know, talking to people is like it's good for you. Like we're not supposed to be solitary creatures. We're not supposed to be like alone all the time. Talking to people, like, communicating with your neighbors, and like hanging out and joking and this and that. Like it's good for you. It's just like on a social level as well. But it's good to have a plan in case we need it. So everybody needs to figure out how to do. I know it's kind of weird because you don't talk to your neighbors and shit, or you might not like them or whatever. It's kind of a weird thing, but you know, strike up a conversation one day. Hey, what's going on? What are you guys doing? You got a family or kids? Let our kids hang out together. You know, stuff like that. So who knows? But you guys, I'll be out for today. I hope you guys had a great Friday. You guys had a great week. I know it was kind of a long one this week. I'm struggling today at work too. Shoot, but we got through it. So hope you guys didn't have a bad one. Hope you guys are gonna have a great weekend. Get some rest. Maybe hang out for a bit. Um, I'm all sunburned too. And we went to that air show last weekend, and no sunscreen or anything, and I got burnt. My skin's starting to peel, my arms and all that kind of stuff. So that's rough. So you guys, hope you have a great weekend. All that good stuff. Once again, if you guys aren't already subscribers, man, please consider hitting that subscribe button as well as that like button. That'll really help us out. Make sure you guys hit that bell icon up as well so you guys don't miss an episode in the future. If you guys are on the go, you want to check us out, Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. At Truth Defender Podcasts. If you guys love what we do and you want to share it with a friend or whoever, please consider doing that. If you have any questions for myself or our guests in the future, as well as guest topic recommendations, shoot us an email, thetruthDefender1776@gmail.com. I think I'll have another show next week, like Tuesday, I think. We are going to be having Charlie Robinson back on from the Global Octopus Global Control, Octopus of Global Control. He's, of course, coming from the David Icke network, and he hangs out with David Icke as well. He'll be on, I think he's in Japan right now. I was just emailing him a while ago, back and forth. So he's going to be coming on. He'll be back next week in the States. So it might be like end of next week, maybe weekend, if not the start of the week after. And then we had this guest on years ago when we first started, right in the middle of the pandemic. Leo Zagami, if you guys know who he is, he was on with Alex Jones a while back. They were kind of investigating the Vatican and all that kind of stuff. So he came on with us a long time ago. So he's gracious to come back on. He's out in Rome, so we're gonna kind of work that thing out, the scheduling, all that kind of stuff. So he'll be back. We'll be talking about the Vatican and the Pope and how much of a piece of shit he is and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so stay tuned for that. I'll have everything up. If you guys follow us on social media, so you guys know when those shows will be popping out. I'll have promos, all that kind of stuff, letting everybody know what's going on. Twitter, GETTR, Instagram. I got to get that Facebook up and running again. Rumble, at Truth Defender Podcast. And I appreciate you guys. You guys have a good weekend, and we'll talk to y'all later, man. Y'all have a good one.
Perfect.